So I'm behind on Sakamoto Days, so I figured I should make a video that talks about what I've watched so far. And this is the lab arc, which I was gonna initially call it the Shin arc because it is about him, but in reality it's the lab arc because we go to the lab where Shin was created and we find out a bit about his backstory. I think it's interesting the way they went into this arc because obviously we start off with a battle, not a battle, but an argument between Lu and Shin, and they're going at it, and then she suddenly says something super insensitive. She's like, "Oh, you're such a freak. Like, it's so annoying that you can read people's minds." And you can tell his face sort of drops. And this leads into obviously there's these two incompetent guys, and they literally bust in with these spacesuits. Like there's the one assassin guy who's a chameleon, and then his buddy, and his buddy's an idiot. He's like, let's just, you must be Shin because you're wearing Shin's apron, right? But it's like, dude, Lu is a chick and she's a redhead. Shin is blonde, but they take her away. But this all leads into a really interesting backstory where we find out how Shin gets his clairvoyancy and how he's able to read minds. So he used to be in this lab with this guy, and he was experimenting because he wanted to find out ways of creating powers or whatever. He was sort of an outcast himself, but one time, it's sort of almost like a One Piece esque way, he creates this sort of formula. And you know how Luffy, at the start of One Piece, there's the gum gum fruit and he eats it? Like Shin does something similar and just drinks it, and he gains the power to be able to read people's minds. The only problem with this is that it kind of makes him somewhat of an outcast because he can read everybody's minds, and they're like, dude, like, I don't want to know. I don't want you to know what I'm thinking right now. Like the kid has no filter. At one point, one of the main scientists is like, "Look, I know you're looking at her ass or looking at her, like thinking about her panties." And then she's obviously like, "Why? Why is he thinking about this?" And then he responds by saying, "Oh." And now she thinks you're weird for thinking about that. So obviously, this is not a good thing because if you're perving over someone, you don't want everybody to know your business. So they all sort of shun him and he runs away. So that was his cool little backstory. But all throughout this arc, we get some pretty interesting fights, and obviously, we get the introduction of the Order in a way, which was really cool. That part where they introduced the Order, because instead of having like the normal ending, which is sort of calm with screenshots, you get this sort of almost rock esque sort of like dark music, and then you see like these screenshots of each one of the Order members, and you're like, whoa, these guys are badass. So we get to introduce the two members of the Order, a blonde dude who has a hammer, like he's Nobara or something. He just has a hammer for some strange reason. And then we have this chick that's wearing almost like a wedding veil, but she's wearing black at the same time, and she's just crazy as well. They both have like these deadpan expressions. They don't express anything, but these used to be Sakamoto's old colleagues. So he runs into them, and he just speaks to them really nonchalantly, and it's just like, whoa, these guys have all of the chill in the world besides when they're killing someone. Like when they're killing someone, they turn into absolute savages. But before that, they just really, really chill with everything they say. So that was interesting for me, that sort of interaction between Sakamoto and his old chums. But the fights in this arc were really interesting. So far, that's meant to be one of the strengths of Sakamoto Days is the fights and the choreography. Previously on the episode that I watched as well, we got introduced to Heisuke, and his whole thing is that he has these ricocheting bullets, and I can't wait to see how this is incorporated into fights because it seems like such a cool power so far. Especially with the way Sakamoto deals with him. Like when they first meet him and he wants to assassinate Sakamoto, Sakamoto literally grabs like a bullet, like I believe it was a bullet, right? And he just throws it into his gun and it just explodes. But the fights that we get are cool in this arc. So we have that chameleon guy from earlier versus Shin and Heisuke, and Heisuke is such an idiot, man. I love that character. He's just so simple minded and stupid. those two sort of team up, and they do this sort of classic thing of where you have an invisible guy. How do you beat the invisible guy? Oh man, you just make sure you pour some type of liquid on them so you can see the liquid on them, and then that's the way of hunting them down. Now, the liquid at first was blood because he kind of gets shot, but then it was water, and then that's how they're able to easily dispose of him because Heisuke uses his ricocheting bullets to not shoot at him directly, but he ricochets the bullets off of a water. What's that thing called again? The water alarm, water sprinklers, right? He ricochets it off of that, and obviously the guy's wet, so Shin can come in for the kill and just like drop kick him to death. But that was a pretty cool fight overall. And then Sakamoto's fight against that strange guy with the sort of Wolverine-esque knives that come out of his wrist. That was absolutely nuts. That fight, like but again, like it's sort of weird that fight at the same time because there's people on the train that are just kind of sleeping, even though they're being thrown at they're being thrown at Sakamoto, these old people, but they're still asleep. And I'm like, dude, like, how are you guys still asleep when you're being hauled over at a guy? And then the kid's there, and instead of screaming, he's just kind of like really nonchalant about the whole thing. He's like, oh, there's an old guy. Well, Sakamoto's not super old. Well, there's this guy with the sort of Ozzy Osbourne-esque round glasses, right? That has blood all over himself. And then the other guy with like crazy knives coming out of his arms, like hurling people at the other dude. And you're just like sitting there doing nothing until you receive some cookies, and then all of a sudden everything's chill. And then you're just like eating the cookies. I'm like, dude, like no one's paying attention to the craziness that's going around them during this fight. Like at one point, Sakamoto gets shot with the other guy's like Mega Buster. Like he charges up a Mega Buster and like shoots him out. And he gets onto the train that goes behind. He dashes forward to the front of the train and onto the second train. And it's just kind of like, I feel as though people on the trains were way too nonchalant about that situation. It was insane. But overall, I would say this arc was pretty cool. I like the fights. I like that we got the backstory of Shin. It was kind of heartfelt. It wasn't like the most Oda-esque flashback where you cry and you're like, oh man, the greatest peak is writing all the time. But it did give us a bit of insight into his character and why he has his powers. So I was cool. I was happy to find that out. But I'll just say, yeah, it's a good arc overall. I really like the dynamic between Lu and Shin and how they kind of like argue with each other, but you kind of know they might fancy each other a bit. Again, it's basic shonen stuff. It's not on the level of Free Ren where you have this sort of elaborate sort of dance animation, with Fern and Stark, and you're like, oh, they love each other, and you can see in the little sort of subtle animations they do that they like each other. It's nothing on that level, but it's cool to see them two interact, and you kind of know they like each other. And then the third wheel over there is Heisuke, and he's just being stupid and crying. But yeah, I would just say I like this show, and I like how you can go from Sakamoto just being out with his wife and kid to all of a sudden it turns into like, oh, let's go to this lab that's full of assassins and beat up the assassins. I like that sort of juxtaposition. Like even the previous arc was in a theme park with Sakamoto and his kid and wife. But meanwhile, while they're at the theme park, there's like guys chasing them down at every corner. And there's the hard-boiled guy that admires Sakamoto. So overall, I think for the second arc, it's pretty good. I like the way they've introduced each one of the characters using one episode. Like, two of them wanted to assassinate him, and then Lu, they kind of saved her or whatever. But so far, yeah, the show's good, and I will be covering it more in future videos. But I'm going to do a couple, maybe one or two more yapping videos like this about Sakamoto Days, and then I'll do proper videos. But guys, I'm just going to upload more content to this channel because why not? Just upload content, have fun with it. And since I've been monetized, I haven't really uploaded every day, and I kind of think that's weird. Like I should be uploading. I have never uploaded every day. I've tried to upload every day on this channel, but I've never really actually done it. And it's like the channel's monetized and I enjoy making videos. Instead of overthinking videos on making these big videos that flop and then being sad. I think I should just make a ton of videos and have fun with it. So that's what I'm going to do. So tell me down below if you watched the whole video. If you watched the whole video, you can type down below um, nonchalant train passenger, because that was the whole point of this arc. We just had a really nonchalant train passenger. You can type that in the comments if you watched the whole video and enjoyed it. And I guess I'll catch you tomorrow with a Yap session or maybe a more scripted video. Who knows? Let's just have fun with this. Anyway, I will catch you tomorrow. Live and learn. Bye bye.